And welcome back to Towerhand Happy Hour, episode 3. I'm Chad,
I'm Boone.
and we're going to talk about something today that's dear to some's heart. We've laughed about it, joked about it. We're fearful of it. It's a company owner's nightmare, and that is free climbing. You ever free climb, Boone?
Unfortunately, I admit it. I'm one of those guys that admit it. I have, it was frowned upon, but it was, nature of the beast back in the day. When I started, it was kind of turned, look the other way when it happens. I know you probably did, didn't you?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was at one time it was part of the business.
Yep.
And even when it wasn't, we did. It's a tough thing to get over. It's obviously
it's a simple thing not to do. Uh, After I caught myself, I said I'm not going to do it anymore. Like I, grew up, got wise to the stuff, the situation. The only thing I've ever caught myself doing, I did it one time, is I thought I was hooked up to another anchor point, but I wasn't. And I went to unhook my Y lanyard, and I was like, oh, I'm not. I never came off it, but I opened that gate up, so I pretty much did. But yeah, it's not worth it, man.
It's tough when it wasn't policed, it wasn't enforced so much. Obviously it is now, but one of the biggest differences that I ever saw was you could watch a guy working around you and he would work circles around you because he wasn't taking the time to clip off, to throw a secondary on his safety.
No.
Something as simple as, then putting in butterflies, snap-ins, whatever it might be. This guy is wasting you. He's beating you 2 or 3 to 1 because you are taking the precautionary measures that you were asked to do in order to save your life. But you got outworked in the process. And then you had another safety measure that possibly was overlooked when it went overlooked for years.
Yeah, in my eyes, that doesn't matter. Me and you've been through that same situation of, someone close to us falling and dying over not being hooked up 100%. It sucks. It changed my career in this industry completely. I went from being a crew leader, tower owner, to, focusing on safety and training and not wanting that to happen again, because I saw how bad it destroyed a company, a family, and, myself. So yeah.
Like what? Talk about that. We got time.
So back when that happened, I was running a tower crew. I was running a company, and the day that he fell, I was actually destacking a 450-foot self-supporter, and the crane cost a crap ton, like, per day, and stuff was going slow. It was muddy out. We were using a lull to get sections, moved over and stuff, and the lull was getting sunk all the time. We were behind, so I said, "Screw it, I'm gonna go up the tower." I took 2 legs, and I left one other guy up there. And hell, I was hooked off for the most part, but there was points in time where I was hooking off to like the wave guide, and like a 3/8 bolt's not going to save me, just simple dumb things that I wasn't thinking about at the time. And then I get down on the ground, cut my phone on the ground, and I get that phone call from you. I had like 47 calls that day and a whole bunch of text messages. "Are you okay? Did you hear what happened?" You broke the news to me at Walmart because I ripped my crotch out of my pants on a piece of all thread, and that sucked for me that day. That was that was the hardest probably I ever cried in my life. Like, I dropped everything in the middle of the aisle at Walmart, and it was such a simple, I don't know what I want to explain this. It's such a simple thing not to free climb, but complacency is the number one killer in this industry. In any industry,
Number
complacency.
one.
It's a killer.
I've said that for years. And I actually didn't get that from the tower industry. Actually took it from, well, I created it from another one of my life experiences, but doing the same thing over and over again.
Yep. And just the small little thing, changed so many people's lives. What's that safety climb cost? 180, 250 bucks. It's crazy.
It definitely changed the course of a lot of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And that's notwithstanding his family too.
Yep.
Yeah, I've ever since then I've been more conscious about safety climb, tying off. I'd spent most of my career pretty reckless. I probably free climbed more than anybody that I knew. Again, I was looking for speed, not a lot of policing in this industry at one time. And
yeah, like what you said, I always tell people now, like when I train people, you free climb. I ask how many people free climbed on accident or free climbed before, and I always get a couple hands or at least one hand in a class. So I said, what do you make an hour? That's what your life is worth. Your life is worth your hourly wage, pretty much. That's the way I consider it.
Sure. It's if you've ever slipped on a rig,
oh, yeah.
as fast as you fall down, it's rare to get a second chance. One of these days, hopefully we'll find out where other climbers are doing now. Where are they now type deal. I don't know, but Andy Reeves was one of them that he was on the rig with A-Train. I won't say what carrier, they were local. A-Train ditched his Y lanyard trying to get across the face of the tower. We'd talked about this one.
Yeah, I remember this. He told me about it.
Just catch everybody up. A-Train had ditched his Y lanyard to cross the face of the tower. This is a simple relamp. Dumb, but figured he'd retrieve it when he came back across the face because he stretched the length of the Y lanyard out. Long story short, he slipped, fell, and something as kind of a prank. I had hooked off before they had taken off. I had hooked off a small 18-inch lanyard, pre-made lanyard, to the back D-ring of his harness with the snap hooks on it. When he fell, he was facing away. It knocked him and it faced him away from the leg of the pie rod tower. The snap hook that was dangling from the back caught one of the upright bolts and held him for a couple seconds till he could gather himself again. Without it, he would have fallen to his death right then and there. Just sheer luck. But he said he fell so fast he didn't even have a chance to grab on anything.
So with that being said, do you know anything about dynamics of fall? Do you know like what they say if your feet falling, per second or whatever?
Yeah, I've been to the class a lot.
Yeah. So like, what is it? It's 1/3 of a second. You fallen 2.5 feet before your body or your mind reacts or notices that you're falling. It takes another 1/3 of a second,
right,
for your body to react, and you've already fallen like 7 feet. People say, "Oh, I'll just catch myself." I've heard of 3 people actually doing that and catching themselves. That's because their SRL was they climbed above their SRL, and when they fell, they slipped and fell. Their SRL didn't engage because it was high or it was lower than what they were at. So they had to fall below it to catch, but they ended up catching themselves. And I was like, man, it's gnarly. Like, I always heard about people saying, if you fall from the tower, I'll just yell you're fired before you hit the ground. I'm like, that's kind of morbid and messed up, but yeah, I don't think you'll have enough time. Because hell, what's our average? In the Midwest, what's our average climb a day? Anywhere from 180 to 350.
Yeah.
Roughly, if you're in a smaller,
Give or take.
Yeah, if you're in a, or like well-populated area, you're smaller towers usually, and you're 80 to 120, 140 possibly. There's no time for that. It's a simple thing. I always was curious about those the Widowmakers. Remember those Widowmaker booms, they call them?
Mm-hmm.
We had to do a job on that, and they're like, "Oh, just go out there. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. Just tie off to the tower." It was a monopole, and I hooked up and tried to go underneath one of the antennas. And that pipe, I pushed on the antenna pipe to get myself back up, and that whole pipe just shifted on me. I'm like, oh, I get why they call them Widowmakers now. Yeah, it's simple things, like.
It's crazy. Some of the, I was talking about this a while back to somebody, and I really wanted to bring this up. This is important to me because not last summer, the summer before, I was out assisting the lighting crew, and it was between rain showers. They wanted some help to hurry up and get the mid-level junction box wired in. So I ran up there and tried to help them out. I had been on a lot of Andrew towers, tower system towers, the angled leg. I'm sure a lot of people here are familiar with those towers. The lattice members, as they go up and come down, the outer ones attached to the outer of the steel angles of the tower. Painted tower you could tell had been painted several times before. But my question to you is, because I know the answer to this one, never did. But my question to you, or at least I never thought about this, is if the bolt broke, how would you know? If that lattice member sheared that bolt somewhere inside of that flat steel leg, and we've seen it a lot, we've seen the hardware on the ground.
Yeah.
How would you know? And I'll tell you the answer to it is I didn't know. I hooked off, and luckily I had never fallen in my safeties in my entire life. I still didn't hear, almost did. I should have. But what happened is I threw my Pelican on at that angle. Didn't seem like it was too hard of an angle, or at least I threw my lanyard on there, and it was sharp. I believe I chose my Pelican instead because of the sharpness of it. And next thing you know, I fall free from that lattice member. When I fell free and it bent that lattice member out, the backside of the bolt and the nut were still painted on and basically welded to that outer lattice member. And when I looked on the backside, the head of that bolt was still attached via paint, pretty much oxidized and welded itself and painted to the inside. So the bolt was sheared. Both ends of the bolt hung on to the hardware there, but the bolt was sheared in the middle of it. So that brings another thing. Luckily I had not done what we had always, you would hear about in texts, but really hard to experience, is what if I would have hooked my softball in on that same hog rod that I did my Pelican. So in all essence, I still am free climbing. I am not hooked off 100% with my safety to something other than where I was at. Now, you can call me a dummy and say that shouldn't happen that way. However, when you're double clicking and you're climbing by, there are a lot of people that put at one time, just for a quick one point or the other, will put both their Pelicans on the same one just to transfer to the next. That's not uncommon. It's not uncommon to throw your Pelican hook or your positioning lanyard on where your safety is, in hopes and knowing that you're going to move that safety in just a second. Had I have done that, I wouldn't be here talking today.
Yeah.
And I never, I had never in my 40 plus years had even thought about that. It had never even been anything that I'd ever dreamed of until, lo and behold,
Still
it
happened. Still
Yeah.
happened. Yeah. You remember the Independence, like the REC tower?
Oh yeah.
That was gnarly. That cross member, that horizontal piece, broke off of my hand when I was climbing up it. No safety climb. The
Right.
pegs were like grade 8 bolts and not even step pegs.
There's still a lot of those out there.
Yeah, but it was. Remember, the owner of the company said he put it on the blacklist like 10 years prior, and I climbed it 5 times in 1 month and tore it down. Yeah, that's the same company. He had it on a blacklist. Do not climb. Get a crane out there in a man basket.
Well, what is blacklisted? I mean,
he put it in an eternal note for the company not to climb the tower without having some type of equipment up there, because he knew it was structurally
I've
not sound.
I've seen a lot of towers that were quote unquote blacklisted, but in the end they still sent climbers back up there.
Yeah. Yep. I know of a fatality incident where the crew was doing it was an upgrade, or I think it was an upgrade for some carrier, and they put the gym pole on the tower, and the weight of the gym pole and then the force of the cables and stuff like that, ended up collapsing the tower. And sure shit, the crew leader had the structural analysis in a folder on the dashboard of the truck, and it pretty much said right there that what the capacity of that tower was at, and the gym pole was not going to be allowed. That's why we have all those rating plans now. They have to be engineered, qualified. Person has to design them with an engineer and all that stuff. I love it.
Was that pre and post 4-to-1 ratio or 2-to-1 or what? It must have been.
Yeah, I don't know all the details on it. I heard the situation that happened. I didn't look too far deep into it, but yeah, it was I think it was 2 guys died. But yeah, the crew leader had the structural analysis right there on the dashboard of his truck.
I'd like to see. I'd like to see the structural of a self-supporter built Chicago style.
Yeah,
I've never seen any of that. I've never. I know we're getting a little bit off topic, and that's okay. But I'd like to see a structural of a self-supporter being built Chicago style, especially when you're. You understand what Chicago style is.
Oh, yeah.
You're bringing
I
that
know
face up there, and now you got a pole rig to the side of it. I'm sure the capacity is enough, but I don't know. I mean, now we get into the known weights and actual structural.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, like some of those self-supporters, man, that I've built, you're 80 feet up and that thing is still 20 some thousand pounds, for a 20-foot section. So I don't know. That's the one thing I'm not pretty much really the only thing I'm not really familiar with is Chicago style. I've seen it done once. I've never was on the tower when it was done, but it's an interesting thing. I give those guys props that do that stuff.
Well, it's fairly easy, especially if you're only swinging the one. You get the kick out, and then you swing just the one leg over there, and then you just got to pin one leg instead of all 3. It's and plus your pole's on the inside, so when you get the kick out, you get that last leg in pretty easy. Of course, the higher up you go, the easier it is.
Yeah. Yep. The side I was on, it was they were stick building the whole thing. Leg X bracing, leg X bracing. Yeah. I give him props. I was like, hell, I'd have got a crane, but that's me.
Well, what's the difference here now when I don't know. When you match the labor hours with
Yeah,
I mean,
with the prep hours, with the yeah.
even if your labor comes in, well, then okay, so then you don't have any prep hours other than the stub because you're, you
Well,
know,
you still got to
you're
stitch stuff together. You stitch your X-rays together, you know.
well, sure,
And I'm sure
but
somebody's gonna mess up and send the wrong X-ray for the wrong section, and hopefully don't
that
get too far ahead of yourself. And
that never
yeah,
happens.
oh
No,
no,
never,
no,
never
no,
seen it.
no, no. I've never seen a top of a self supporter upside down before. No, never have.
I've seen it built that way and kept that way.
Oh yeah, yeah, no,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, yeah. So free climbing. In your career, have you seen more guys do it than not? Have you seen? I'd like to think that it's getting better than it ever was.
Oh, it's definitely better than what it was, you know. But yeah, back in like my early career, oh dude, all the time, all the time, and it was just, you know, look the other way, don't say nothing, nothing happened, no harm, no foul kind of a thing. But you know, we all got a rude awakening for that. And, speaking of like free climbing, define it. We see guys that are stacking a tower and there's only one, safety rope on the climbing face of the leg when they're stacking, and all three of the guys are on the same rope at the same time climbing.
Well,
the 20 feet.
That would be a good one that you could use to try to prove me wrong. We're gonna have to get somebody in here smarter than me, but I remember a time where the communication standard with the tower construction allowed that, and I'm talking post 98. It allowed that. There was nothing in there, unless obviously it was your own company safety manual that had said that you during the construction that you had to be 100% tied off. Now, obviously, you're saying, with the company you and I work for, we didn't have that option because everything we did, you were tied off over 6 foot. But as far as the telecommunication standard, the construction, there was nothing in there yet.
That's all changed now.
So, all right, so we've talked about free climbing. We've talked about, I think everybody on that could possibly listen to this or would listen to this understands what free climbing is. So what you've been in the safety business now for, I don't know how many years, several years now. What is your recommendation to a company once catching a guy free climbing? I mean, he's a top guy. He's a good performer. We'll start with never been caught or never been rumored to ever free climb before.
Oh, that's easy. It's an investigation. You suspend him. You do an investigation, find the results out. It's a fireable offense for me. No questions asked. That's a cancer I don't want in my company. That's a guy who's going to cost a company, millions and a lot of heartache.
So he's terminated.
Oh yeah, no questions asked. After the investigation, we find out, yeah, he was free climbing. Yeah, he was. Yeah.
See, that's another tough one because he is at this point has left your company and he drives 10 miles away to the next company.
Well, that's why companies need to check references, need to check with other employers. Hey, you hired John Doe. He worked for you for 5 years. He said he was a top hand and he did all this. He has all this other experience. So I know you can't. That's kind of a legal thing too. What I should backtrack on that. It's kind of a legal thing too, because technically, the company should only say, yeah, he worked here. Yes, he was an employee. You really can't, talk too much about a person,
So tell me I'm wrong, but I thought either TIRAP or NWSA was actually going to incorporate that in their climber. So if we're
I,
registering climbers through NWSA or TIRAP, and
mhm,
I'm not bringing this up to get in any trouble with anybody. I'm just
mhm.
asking, if we're registering climbers so that climbers can be recognized and their certificates can be recognized, move with them from one company to the next, so we know exactly what this guy brings to the table, or woman brings to the
Mhm.
table. Uh, you would think that somehow, some way, it would come with a guy that could possibly have infractions, or even, I've really never seen it, but blacklisted from the industry.
I don't know, you know, without putting my foot in my mouth, I'm sure there's a way where, like, there's a code of conduct. When you pass a test or a class, you get a certification. There's always a code of conduct where you have to abide by. Whether it's 100% time off, not talking about the test with people who have outside people who haven't taken the test yet. Yada yada yada. There could be, if someone turned them in, I'm sure there's some type of repercussion for something. There's
But here we go. You've been in the safety industry how long, and that of, nothing like that exists today.
Well, it exists because I know plenty of like in-house instructors who have been, gotten their certifications, taken away from them, and OSHA instructors that, and so on and so on. So it's out there, but it's the problem of proving it,
Or enforcing
so
it.
there's no, yeah, or forcing it. So there's no, legal. No one wants to get sued. Everyone's sue happy nowadays, so no one wants to get sued anymore. So there's dude, this industry is so, it's constantly growing. And you talked about this 100 times. You could be the crappiest crew in the industry, get kicked off a site in the Northeast. The next week you're working in the Midwest for another contractor doing the same thing. It's crazy. It is. It's too big. The industry's too big. There's too many turn the other way things. It's all about getting the carrier done and getting the new technology up.
So there's no climber re-education. It is terminated, and then the climber moves on to another company. I mean, I understand. I've seen it.
Well, you can always do remediation training, but free climbing's a big thing. You do
Sure.
it once, you're doing it again. It can cost you everything. If I was the owner of that company and I cost one free climbing, you do an investigation, see if it was free climbing, and that's done.
No, I wanted to know your opinion on it. I really don't. I really don't know that I even have an opinion. I don't hire guys. I know what our laws are. I am an active CM, and I know what I am forced to do. That is an entire crew shutdown. And unfortunately, if it doesn't kill the climber or kill the guys on the tower by falling, I mean, I'm throwing the whole crew off the site, and I have to report it.
Well, like you just said, it's a whole crew shutdown for one guy doing something stupid. So
but it could cost his company.
Well, exactly. But that whole crew most likely, or that whole company most likely, is going to be required to do some type of remediation training and get, letters and, on the phone with safety and HR and the legal team to prove what type of training they just went through. So you're wasting more money. That's, as an owner, it's just done. Granted, yeah, you fired that guy, but the whole crew's still on site.
I mean, these climbers, these schools that we put them through, in the classes that you've conducted. I mean, you've conducted a lot of classes. these guys have heard it all. They've heard it all. They've been through it all. They've heard the horror stories. They've heard the war stories. They've I mean, there's not a whole lot left to tell anybody other than, you know, you've seen guys that come through your class, and you've seen some pretty athletic guys that, I'm sure it was hard for you to understand that if anybody, he had the cat-like reflexes, he was the guy who was going to last, but that doesn't happen. I've seen some pretty good guys that never made it back.
Dude, I still see guys that walk into, tower safety class. They walk into the class, we go to climb, we inspect our gear, they pull out a harness out of the bag, and it's just covered in paint. Just covered in, FCC red and white paint. And I'm like, what the hell? We're like, oh, yeah, this is my harness. This is what I wear every day. What do you guys do? Do you guys paint towers all the time? Yeah. And your boss doesn't get you a new harness? Like, why is he putting that in the bid, to get you new stuff? Follow your manufacturer's recommendations. If you have paint and stuff on your harness, you got to take it out of service. It's simple as that. But dude, I've seen guys walk in with, the homemade lanyard still, homemade like rope lanyards and stuff that they used to do back in the day.
Yeah.
There's, dude, you name it. I've seen it coming through a class before, and guys have no idea that they were doing anything wrong. And a lot of times it's, the wireless guys or the ham guys or, the small mom and pop shop, and they own their own towers, and, they're just doing it because they want to get on some other tower that requires it.
Speaking back to free climbing and not, obviously the recommendation in not free climbing, ascending the tower is double clicking. But I do notice I've yet to be in a class that focused a lot on helping a climber with the double clicking, as far as maybe recommendations and speed, because you've seen guys do it right, and they're a lot faster than another guy who doesn't do it right. They let them know that this is where you're going to put your hooks, and you'll climb past, and you'll grab your next one. But I don't see a lot of focus on that. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, me personally, with all the new guys, I always focused on that stuff. You see too many times where guys would, have their hooks at their feet, and they're hooking up as high as they can and have their hooks at their feet.
Yep.
It's dumb stuff like that,
Well, what do you recommend?
Like
all right. So go ahead. What do you recommend? If it's not at your feet, I was one of the guys who used to hook it down on my knees. I mean, how,
it all depends. It also all depends, what type of Y lanyard you have too. What class of Y lanyard you have. I always say, don't go below your waist. That's me. But, I can climb with my lanyards open in my hand, hook and unhook, and have my other one still in my hand, opened up, ready to go, keep climbing. I have that pace and I have that experience, So I just tell guys it's going to suck for the longest, because for me, it sucked for the longest time until I got used to doing it. And, everything takes practice, You remember, I remember when I was a new guy in the tower industry, snap ins. The first thing I really did was snapping lines all the time. That sucked. My hands were, sore as hell, but I got used to it, and I got quick at it, and I got, experience with it. And by the time it was said and done, I was good at it, but everything takes practice, everything takes, everyone has to learn their own ways. Cause I say to do, something this way, but they're 6 inches shorter than me, and 80 pounds less than me. They're going to do it you're going to do it a different way. If they can't climb a saber tower like I can,
Right. Yeah. I've seen a lot of guys. I've seen a lot of close calls. I've seen guys come down off those rigs, and they it's odd that they would hit the ground, and you knew they succumbed to a close call, or at least had a close call. because I never saw them free climb ever again. And that's,
Mhm.
they got their second shot and they never again. Um, People say they don't understand it today. I understand it. I don't. And the only reason I understand it is because I did it as much as I did. And I regret it because it's really, really hard to come up to a guy and tell a guy, hey, dude, you can't be doing this. I mean, it's going to cost you your life. Uh, I remember before the full body harnesses came out, and I tell this to climbers, and I get done telling them, they're like, what? That's not even a close call. But I was 700 foot up on a painted guy tower. I think it was a 1,500 foot guy tower. I was about halfway up, and you get to time your steps as you're going up because the ladder is so far across. Well, I get into some of the midsection there. Every time you get to a guy wire, you get sections that uh, are the thicker ones because they're beefed up through the pull off area.
Mhm.
And I hadn't really had to look because my first couple sets of guy wires didn't have any obstruction behind the ladder. Well, the ladder was on the outside up against the face of the guy tower. So I'm climbing up, and again, we had no way of being 100% tied off. You had the single little knot lanyard up in the front of your tree trimmer's belt, and that was it.
Mhm.
You wrap it once and then sit back into that fat knot, and it kept you from falling.
Yeah.
So I'm climbing up the ladder. I make it through the first couple sets of thick sections through the pull offs, and I think on the third one, my foot kicks the metal right behind the ladder. So there's not any, and I'm moving fast. I mean, tree trimmer's belt, and I'm young. I'm going fast. Tennis shoes on, shorts on, no shirt, gloves, tree trimmer belt, tennis shoes, and my foot kicks one of the hog rods, and it's enough to where it kicks. I'm already picking my other leg up off there, and it kicks my foot right off the ladder because already nothing but my toes are going to make it past the rung of that ladder.
Mhm.
So I'm hanging on with both my hands from this ladder for just a matter of maybe it was a couple seconds. Seemed like it was 5 minutes, but 700 feet up. I mean,
Yeah.
I never forgot that. Still don't forget that. And I tell people that it was one of my biggest close calls, and everyone's like, "What? I fell on my lanyards. I about sawed my arm off. I was a close call. But it it was a man. I paid attention after that.
Yeah. The scariest thing I ever had happen to me was I was cutting in grounds, at the top of the tower on the main lines, and I had a rope liner hooked up with my pelican hook was hooked up afterwards. And before I swung back over to grab more, beetle and tape, I rehooked my Y liners up, took my other one off, swung over, grabbed more stuff, put it in my pouches, swung back over, and I kind of like slipped out of my seat. And when I kind of propped myself back up and jumped back in my seat, I must have came out of the beaner and I fell. And when everything happened, said and done, I fully deployed everything. I was literally like 4 or 5 inches from just racking myself on a guy wire. I was like, oh, my nuts. Yep, that could have sucked.
Well, and I want to get Frank on this.
Yeah, he was
I
on
want to
that
get
side
Frank
when I
on this,
did that.
but he's the keeper of bad luck, the bearer of bad luck.
Yeah.
I want to get Frank on here. Frank and I were on a rig. We were. I remember it like it was 10 years ago. No, it was longer than 10 years ago. But it was just him and I, and we were putting grounds on some microwave mounts or something. We were working out in Jones County, Iowa, and Frank, I just remember we were doing something with the microwaves, and we were working probably 50 feet apart, 60 feet apart, somewhere in there. And Frank he didn't notice he hooked off onto, remember those universal mounts, those guy or the universal mounts where the all thread would stick all the way through the inside of the tower. Well, he was hooked off. He was hooked off the end of one of those, thinking he was behind the chocks, behind the saddles, and he made some movement or something, and his pelican came right off that thing. and he fell into both. He had both of his softballs hooked up. I will
Oh,
tell you, I thought he was going to drag that guy tower over. That tower shook, and
oh, that's a lot of force.
I mean, it was like an earthquake. Frank was a pretty big guy then. Yeah, I don't know. I'd like to think that the industry that we didn't have any more guys free climbing. Obviously, when I come around and on my sites, I never see it because they know I'm going to be there. They expect me to be there. They think I might be there. I don't get to see it like I used to. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't even. I can't tell you how rapid it or how often it happens now, but I know I used to see it a lot more than I do.
Yeah. Like I got a crew one time when I was doing an audit, and at that time I had a drone, and I was probably quarter mile out. Got the drone out, flew it up. The camera was pretty good on it. I got close enough. I could see the guy. He was moving fast. I could tell he wasn't hooking up. And so I flew the drone back to me, put some tape and a piece of paper that says, "You're fucked, climb down." Flew it back up to him, got it right in his face, 15 feet away from him, got his attention. He's like, "What the hell?" He started climbing down. I put the drone away, pulled up the sight, said, "You're fired." That was it. I had a video of it and everything. Yeah. It's simple, man. It's not worth it. This job should be the safest, one of the safest industries in the world. There's plenty of things out there that, can kill anybody. In my eyes, we should be more likely to die traveling to the site than actually working on the site. Granted, sometimes, structural stuff is not, accounted for the weight of the guy on the boom, installing that equipment. And I've seen that, plenty of times where, they said the boom's at, this percentage capacity, and the company actually asked the engineer, said, "Hey, so it's gonna take two of these guys to do this. Combined weight of them is like 750 or two, whatever it is." And the engineer's like, granted, there's a safety for everything, but he's like, "Yeah, well, maybe we should do another route." I don't know. It's just it mind boggles me. Like, you have all this gear that's provided to you by your employer. What's a typical loadout for a tower climber? Anywhere from $1,100 to over $2,000. Depends how crazy you get with them. But you all have the basic things. Harness, Y lanyard, safety climb, positioning lanyard, hard hat. We all get the same stuff. Why don't we use it?
So I have to ask you, I'll put you on the spot here for a minute. Okay. I hope you don't mind. We can. So you got into speaking of, I won't say speaking of anything, but you got into this business here, in the training field in, I believe, 2016. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was like 2015.
Okay.
No, yeah, it was 2016.
Well,
Yeah, you're right.
I know 2016 was a big deal for you.
Yep. 2016. Yep, you're right. You're correct. Yep.
And the fatality of Stefan, it crushed a lot of us. So you're pretty passionate. You wanted to get into it. So my question to you is with you getting into the safety side of it, and when we understand why, what do you tell these classes different than what you were ever told, or do you? I mean, there's got to be, I would think there would be something in it with the free climbing. Do you ever tell Stefan's story? Where did you go from there?
Oh, I tell it every time. I tell it all the time. Every class I teach for, tower rescue, tower safety rescue, tower climbing. Oh yeah, every time. Cause I say this is why I'm passionate, and I always give guys a warning, pretty much saying before I start this class, if I see you messing around this class or see you on your phone or on your laptop and not paying attention, I'm sorry, but I'm going to, jump your ass a little bit because I'm passionate about this. It killed one of my friends. It's killed too many people out there doing stupid things, and, take it or leave it. And yeah, it's every time, every damn class I've taught, I've been adamant about telling Stefan's story because it's why I do what I do. That's why I'm such an asshole sometimes, and speak my mind when I probably shouldn't.
Yeah. So
because
in retrospect, anybody, I hope we have listeners. I hope they made it to this far to this point. I don't want to see anybody free climbing. I've done this work for a long time. I've seen a lot of lucky guys, and I have seen a lot of unlucky guys along the way, including one of our own, due to free climbing. Due to not being tied off properly, I should say. So I mean, if I hope I don't forget, which is why I brought it up now. I just, I don't want to see anybody free climbing. I'd rather meet you in the bar for a drink, and I'd rather you tune into our show.
Yeah. Your life's not worth, 20, $30 an hour, wherever you get paid, $18 an hour, or whatever you get paid per hour. That's what your life's worth,
No, and again, we all understand the speed of it, and it's the thunderstorm pulling in, the snowstorm coming in, the cold wind, Saturday coming around, needing to get it done on Friday so you can go home. I mean, if you fall, it ain't gonna matter. So
and if that's the excuse you have for free climbing, I call bullshit. It's not an excuse to me. That's just, laziness in my eyes. No offense to anybody out there, but dude, really, come on, take the extra. How long does it take you to climb down 300 feet, or 500 feet?
Well,
not too long. It might suck. I remember being at 900 feet in a blizzard and literally looking down while I'm trying to climb down, like, well, at least I know I can't survive this,
Yeah, free climbing's got to stop. This isn't, the equipment's better than it ever has been before. If anything, maybe it's a little bit overkill. There's some nice stuff out there. But I hope anybody listening, I hope anybody talking to anybody, I hope nobody's free climbing. I hope everyone is being safe, and yeah, it's we're long past that. I'd like to think we're long past that.
But free climbing too, it comes back to also, other dangers as well, not tying off to the booms when you're going out to work on an antenna or whatever, tie off to the tower. And when you get back to the tower's, leg, rehooking up, because, that drop of that sling that you added to your 6-foot lanyard, that's just going to cause more force on your body. Your swing fall, knowing your swing fall, you could be tied off, to the tower leg, be out on the edge of the boom, slip and fall. Where are you going to fall to? Are you going to fall into the tower and just hit, the tower leg, or are you going to fall into some altar that's sticking out and it's going to impale you? That's things you got to think about too. There's so many aspects of this stuff that, can be discussed, and we could go on a rant for hours and hours and hours about it. But it's all about policing yourself and, taking accountability for your actions.
I'm trying to remember when it was. It would have had to been, I still have want to say 5 years ago, but I think it was 9 or 10 years ago. We had a guy that was local. We had a guy that tied off to, I don't know what he was tied off to, but he had his softball tied back to the tower, not to the boom. He was walking across one of the stiff arms, didn't realize that the stiff arm was carrying rust and broke. He fell, and when he swung into the stiff arm, it rammed right into his stomach.
Ooh.
And one of the guys, one of my friends was telling me that they at that point, they can't even sew you back up. They had to keep them open for 9 days, scrape the
Oh, yeah.
infection out. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know.
They like go through his, they like go through his stomach, stuff like that, like all the way
Yeah.
through.
Yeah.
So he probably has a colostomy bag now too, doesn't he?
I don't know.
Yeah, that sucked. That sucked to have.
But I'll tell you, he wasn't, to me, he wasn't doing anything really too much different than what we've seen 1,000 times in the past. We're just going to step over here real quick and I'll make sure I'm tied off so I don't fall. Well, his tie off point anchored him into the area that was going to hurt him the most.
Yeah.
I got a good one. Train was up on this. We're on this rig over in Western Iowa, and it was a Roan 80 or Roan 9. I think it was Roan 80. He was tied off to one of the lattice members, and if you tie away from yourself, you can tie on one of the upright lattices, believe it or not, and not tie, but use the pelican, and then just set your feet into where the pelican stays. Well, he or set your feet so you're holding yourself back, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And I don't know what took his mind off of whatever he was doing, but someone said something. One of the guys in the tower threw something down. I don't know what it was. He took his foot away and he looked down and he cheesed down the whole 45-degree lattice. Of course, Train turned his face to see where he was going, and of course, it sent him right into the end of a stiff arm. So he had this black eye, and it looked like someone put shoe polish around a set of binoculars. He had this black eye that looked almost fake, and he wore that black eye for a month. I mean, he's lucky he didn't shatter his eye socket. Anybody else we know would have broken their orbital or whatever they call that.
Oh yeah.
But that dude, he had a black eye that just would not go away. I didn't think he'd ever lose it.
Yeah, it's like, talking about like, tower, parts and stuff not being like attached properly. We can't trust anybody anymore in this industry. Like when you climb up the tower, take your time to look around your surroundings and, look at the boom, look at the collar, look at, everything before you go out there and make sure it's, tight, locked down right, or installed correctly. I've been on a couple booms before where I don't know if they got lazy and didn't install the correct all thread, but there was like thinner all thread on things, like,
not to mention the safety climb, the cable system.
Oh yeah.
I went up one in 2008 in the winter of 2008, 2009. I went up to, they sent me with some parts, and I didn't look to see what parts it was. They said, get up to the top of the tower, take a look around. I get to the top of this tower here, and the safety climb is being held up there by number 9 wire. And I look, I'm typically better at looking to see what they had made a hardware pack for me before I went up. I opened the hardware pack, and sure as shit, it is parts for the goddamn safety climb that I just got off of. So here I am. Yeah. It was the first and only time I'd ever seen anything like that.
What kind of tower was it?
It was
was it a monopole? Was it?
No, it was self-supporter.
Oh, at least it was a self-supporter you could hopefully hook off to.
Yeah, it had a ladder all the way up the thing. You've been on it before. Yeah. Yeah, you've been on it before. Let's just say it's located in Johnson, Iowa.
Oh, okay. No.
Yeah. So, well, like you said, you don't know all the time exactly what you're getting on. It's not built by you. There's your inspection. There's your single guy that isn't even supposed to be using the device. So in all reality, you're the safety guy, if I would have been doing my job properly, I would have been double clicking the whole way up until I got to a point to the top of it to where I could inspect the safety climb system.
Yep. Yep.
And at that point, it would have failed until I caused it to not fail by putting in the hardware that should have been put in the thing in the first place. So
we can't trust anybody anymore,
well,
like back in the day, I always heard this from like old timers, when we stacked the tower back in the day, it was the contract was a handshake and there was a photo of the rebar, the concrete, the ground ring, and the tower stacked. Now that photo, packets what 2,000-3,000 photos probably, probably.
Oh yeah, perfect. And the concrete samples are still. And I just tripped over concrete samples the other day in the snow. My ankle's still healing up, but someone left the concrete sample still laying around. I'm sure those got tested.
Oh yeah.
And that, and the tower is how old? 3 years old?
Yeah. Yeah. No.
Well, we can rant and rave all day on this stuff, but hey, look, this is something that's I'm pretty well passionate about, and it's free climbing. And am I a hypocrite? Oh yeah, I am. I did enough of it in my day that I did enough of it for everybody. I was lucky enough, fortunate enough to make it through it.
Mm-hmm.
I have what I think is a beautiful family. I mean, you might think my kids are ugly. I hope not, but
No comment.
Sorry, Debbie. But yeah, I just I hope I can keep doing these things, and I hope you listeners, anybody out there, can at least get something from this. Don't free climb. See guys free climbing. Take care of it. Best case you get caught, and best case scenario is you lose your job.
That's the best case scenario. Point blank, they saved your life right there.
Right.
It's,
right.
Everything's written in blood for a reason.
It's all been written in blood.
You might think it's dumb, but there's a reason why it was made.
Right.
It's it's all about accountability and ownership of things. We got to police ourselves, and we got to take accountability for what our actions are. You do things the correct way, and everyone does it the same correct way over time. I'm probably going to back you off you a little bit,
It's all about making it home.
No, it's not worth it.
All right, Boone. I'm bringing
All
this
right,
to an
man.
end, man.
Yeah.
Towerhand Happy Hour, episode 3.
Yeah, stay safe out there. Later.
Later.